Welcome everyone to the 92nd episode of the LIBERcast, and thank you everyone for being there as usual. The people who are supporting this podcast and the guests that I've come and I had the honor of having on this podcast, and all the things that I cover are for me the things that I think they are the most important. We are in a strange era, and I think this involution is not only a bad thing. I think it's gonna help us rediscover the human nature. How do we establish this connection with nature and with people and with our own body and our mind and our heart and all these beautiful things that we are intimately connected with. So, before we start, I'm doing my usual. Oh, here we go. So, we are part of the One Great Work Network. Sorry about that. An aggregate of awesome people, students of the occult and psychology and occult traditions and morality and natural law. So go there and explore this incredible site with hundreds of hours of information. I mean, it's free. You go there and it's totally free, and you have access to all the information with all these beautiful people we got there. You know, David Greenberg is there. You have Corey Andrulat, Chris Jensen, Brendan Martin. You know, Francesco Sani that I had, and many more people who are there and working hard to put this information out. So welcome, David. Welcome to the LIBERcast.
Thanks so much, Fred. It's great to be back here, my friend. It's great to be back here once again. And I just wanted to say also, like, as I follow your work, I mean, the quality of the LIBERcast is going up and up. You've had some amazing guests on recently, people of very high caliber. It's a pleasure to be counted among, within that crowd. So I'm really happy to be back here.
You're welcome. So, just before we start, can you quickly go over, where you came from and why you do that, and maybe tell us where we can like see your stuff, your work at the same time.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, and this is going to dovetail very well into some stuff we're going to talk about tonight. But basically, the way I like to explain it to people is I was a person of very low consciousness. I was a person who did not have a really good level of self-awareness. I was a person that really didn't love myself and didn't pay attention to didn't try to understand either myself or the nature of reality. And because of that mindset, I suffered a lot, and that suffering increased over time. So I had like the false version of me where I thought things were going well in my life, but really I was like a train wreck, and I was causing myself to suffer, and I was causing suffering for others. And that continued and that continued, and it kind of reached a crescendo right around the time of the pandemic. It was very, synchronistic that it really came to a head at the beginning of the pandemic, and I'm sure that's not a coincidence. And that was kind of my critical moment of choice. That was where I had a chance to, devolve into even further suffering and maybe even self-annihilation, at least in this lifetime, or to get my shit together and start to figure things out and, really start to take responsibility for my life. And I chose, in 2021, I chose the latter path, the I guess the middle path, if we want to call it that. But I did make a hard right in terms of where my life was going. And I basically, took it upon myself to become initiated, to start to learn. I got exposed to natural law. I got exposed to the occult sciences. And then piece by piece, just like it says in the Kabbalion, when the student is ready, the teaching will appear. that was basically what happened to me in the course, starting really about 2 years ago. And I really embraced it. I think what I had going for me was I had my mindset was good enough that I was willing to go there. I was willing to, you know, admit that I had been wrong about things even for many years. And since then, for the last 2 years, I've been really, really committed to this path. And as quickly as as much as I've been able to, I've also taken to heart the importance of sharing what I've learned with others. In other words, not just sitting on that knowledge, not just, consuming it for myself, for my own benefit, but putting it back into the world to the maximum degree that I've been able to as a teacher of natural law, as a student and a teacher, as a content creator, which I am a video content creator, like you mentioned. We're both on the One Great Word Network, which is an amazing network. And I'm very honored to be there. I don't take that honor lightly, that I was invited to be on that network. So today, 2 years after that awakening happened over many years, but the real watershed was starting about 2 years ago. And since then, I'm almost 100, I'm pretty much 100% committed to what I do as a content creator, as a teacher of natural law and occult sciences. And I try to just keep going deeper and deeper into that. So even compared to when you and I first spoke, I've really made efforts to just delve more into it and continue to learn about myself. If people want to find me, my website's just freedomvibe.org. I'm also on YouTube like you are, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, other platforms. I mean, it's easy to find me. Just Google my name or Freedom Vibe or the two together. And I don't plan to go anywhere. I plan to continue to level up and continue to create more content over time. There is no, as Sethicus Boza, who's another great content creator, said, there is no arrival point when it comes to, truth, seeking truth. It's a nonstop, continuous process, and that's how I look at it. And it's a process that we can enjoy, but also be challenged by.
Certainly, and I saw a lot of things, a lot of little projects that you started too. You did music, you did like short videos, you did presentations and things like that. That are some. So go see and encourage David on his work. It's awesome. So we wanted to talk about health, and I think this thing concerned everyone. Everybody is concerned with that, and we are having so much repression from everywhere. All these ideologies and religions and these standards, cultural standards and things like that influence our way of being, of our way of eating and treating ourselves in this context of living into a culture. This word is very big. When we talk about even growing food, we call it a culture. So I mean it's I think there's so much to talk about this. I don't know where you wanted to start with it, but here you go.
Great. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's hard. It is hard to know where to start, Fred. You're absolutely right. There's so many things. There's a few topics that hopefully we'll get a chance to cover depending on the time we have. I will start off by saying that, like I mentioned earlier, what kind of really kicked it off for me as far as catalyzing the need to dive in and really focus on this was the fact that I was suffering in terms of my own health. And I'm talking about a physical component as well, right? And one of the things that we learn, and I think most people can understand this intuitively, but for example, even in the circles of natural law and in our circles, there is a heavy focus on mental health, on getting the mind in balance, and I think that's great, and that is important. And obviously, the first principle is the principle of mentalism, so it makes sense that we want to start there. But the body is also a reflection of our consciousness. The body, and in fact, there really is no uncoupling the body with the mind in this reality. They are inextricably linked. So what I came to understand is if I want to heal, I need to focus on healing my mind and my body together. And I actually had strong incentive to do this, Fred, because I was actually suffering physically. You may be surprised, and people may be surprised to hear that starting about 3 years ago and then kind of building up over the last couple of years, even until fairly recently, there were many days where I was bedridden. I practically didn't want to get out of bed due to a very debilitating pain principally in my lower back. That seems to have been the area that has most plagued me. Again, I'm sure that's not a coincidence. Like basically in the lumbar spine, and there are a couple of reasons why that is. I mean, there's even a physiological condition that I've had my whole life. Not to make a big deal out of it, but basically I was either born or early in my life, my L5 and S1, instead of having a intervertebral disc between them, which is the normal physiology of a human being, they're basically fused together. And some of the, and this in itself doesn't necessarily have to be this does not necessarily have to be a major crisis in life if properly managed. But for example, when I was a young kid, I would walk on my tiptoes because of the decreased mobility. And my parents never said word number one about this. Like, it's almost like it wasn't important to them. And maybe I'm not even sure they were even aware of what was going on, to try to help me to understand. Another example, I've never in my entire life been able to touch my toes without bending my knees. No matter how much stretching I do, it's physiologically impossible for me. Now, again, those things aren't necessarily bad, but what happened is due to my neglect of my body, due to what I said earlier about not having this level of consciousness where I cared enough about my health, my condition would just started deteriorating over time. And it started devolving into more and more back pain. And I would even, through exercising in ways without being conscientious about it, through my nutrition or lack thereof, it just all started to exacerbate, right? And again, it all ties back to not caring enough about what's going on to do the research to figure it out. So when I became a student of occult knowledge, when I became a student of natural law, one of the things that I embraced was becoming my own doctor. Basically, I need to, basically what I said to myself, I need to figure this out. Just like I need to figure out my mindset, just like I need to clean out the junk in my mind and basically create a healthier mindset. I don't need to go look for, morphine or medications to get myself out of this situation. I need to manage this myself, figure out what I can do to the best of my ability, and determine if and how I can heal myself and optimize my health. And that's essentially what set me off on this journey to figure this out. And I've been able to figure out a few things that have really gotten me out of bed and gotten me more mobile. And I'm not saying in any way that, it's, again, just like what I said earlier, there is no arrival point. It's just a process of improvement. So health is also a process of improvement. But I've been able to figure out a few things, and that's what I'm hoping to share tonight. A few strategies, a few maybe what people call biohacks related to, the things that I wanted to talk about tonight. I'll just mention them. Dry fasting, which has been an amazing strategy. Maybe we'll talk about that first because it's such a powerful paradigm. Nutrition in general. Grounding or earthing. We'll talk about that if we have time. EFT, which I think is, again, something that a lot of people are aware of. And related to EFT, acupressure. So those are 5 things. We may or may not have time to talk about all of them, but whatever we have a chance to discuss tonight is going to be great. And my main intention is to share as much as I can. Obviously, I'll say the same caveat that we all say, don't believe me. I'm going to speak very authoritatively within the context of myself, of what I've come to learn. But that doesn't mean that I'm an authority for you. All it means is I've figured out certain things for myself, and I'm sharing them powerfully with you and hoping that you'll go do your own research. And obviously, if Fred or I or anyone can help you figure out how to do that research, we're going to provide you with the best information we can. But it's not about believing me or not believing me. It's just about, taking the information. If you're someone that is suffering or wants to improve your health, then there's almost certainly something here for you.
I mean, there's fundamental things that we have to start with, and I think being aware of these reactions that you have when you have your, let's say you eat something, and what is the response of your body, and what and these things there, it's the basis of everything. Eating, it's the base of everything. It depends on what you're putting in on your body and in your body.
Or what you're not putting in your body.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
so the dry fasting.
Yes.
I mean, this has been a total level up.
Hmm.
Let me just say, from a psycho-spiritual perspective, if dry fasting is going to really lead you to face yourself. Let me just say that straight up. It's a deeper work. It is a complement to shadow work. It is a complement to facing the self, because it's going to require discipline and willpower, something that we all can benefit from cultivating. And it's amazing. The benefits are amazing, because if they weren't, it wouldn't be worth it. So, I mean, I'm here to tell you it's worth it.
So what's the difference between fasting and dry fasting?
Sure. So a lot of people are familiar with fasting. It's a very well-known paradigm, especially in these circles. Many people, I think, myself included, when they think of fasting, mostly think of fasting meaning abstaining from eating any kind of foods, whether solid or liquid, but perhaps continuing to drink water, and in some people even allow themselves other types of liquids depending on the fast. So what's happening is in these types of fasts, the digestive system continues to operate, and that's really important to draw a distinction. Hippocrates, thousands of years ago, he made an observation. He said, and I don't remember the exact quote, but basically his observation was, as long as you continue to activate your digestive system and consume things, healing does not happen, healing of the body. And again, that's not an exact quote. Go look up the quote, but that's the essence of the message. If we look at animals in the wild, or just animals in general, instinctively, what is something that happens? If an animal receives a serious wound or a serious illness, what's the first thing they do? They go and crawl up in a corner, they refuse all food and all water, and they shut down while their body heals. And in many cases, if it's not a completely life-threatening injury or illness, they will recover. In fact, often miraculously. It will just take some time. So dry fasting, what it means is we're not putting anything down our throats, basically, to put it crassly. Not a drop is going down our throat. Neither food nor water, nothing else. We're literally pausing. We're putting a hard pause on all of our digestive activities, right? So that is the definition of a hard fast. A dry fast. Now there's hard dry fasting and soft. I practice soft dry fasting. What's the difference? Hard dry fast, you do not come into contact even with water, even on your body.
Damn.
Yeah, it's hardcore. And I'm not saying I would never practice that, but I generally practice soft dry fasting. And part of I do that is because where I am right now, although that's subject to change, is such a hot and tropical climate that it would basically, I have not been able to sustain that, and I don't think it's actually necessary to gain all the benefits. It isn't necessary. The main point is to shut down your digestive system, or to pause it. I wouldn't say shut it down, to put it on pause. So a soft dry fast means you can still bathe in water, hopefully clean fresh water, maybe natural water, Hopefully not water that's too chlorinated if you can avoid that. You could still take showers. I like to take cold showers, and so forth. You could even brush your teeth as long as you don't swallow, according to some practitioners. But you're not swallowing anything, no liquids, not even water. And dry fasts, we all dry fast every night, unless you're constantly waking up and drinking water in the middle of the night, which I unfortunately used to do until I figured out it's not a good idea. We're all dry fasting at night, and that's why the maximum amount of healing happens during the night. But it's only generally a 6 to 8 hour window, so we can gain a benefit, but it's not the benefit you can gain from dry fasting for longer times, which you can. And there are protocols as far as dry fasting for a number of days. The most I've dry fasted is about 3 days. And the protocols that I study and aspire to embrace, they are generally 7-day dry fasts. So just to give people an idea of what we're talking about. And I have not yet been able to sustain more than a 3-day dry fast because I'm still learning, and it is a practice.
I mean, I'm used to do it from time to time, and I'm not eating 15 hours in a day. And but I'm drinking actually, so there's water there. But it's very beneficial for my digestion first, and then cleaning. I think this is the cleaning part that I like about this. You feel lighter, and when you eat afterward, you don't eat too much. It's like doing a reset on my system, and I like it very much. We're here in the West. We're too much. We're eating too much for our needs because we're staying at the same place. I mean, we don't go from a region to another region and then so on. So we're very how do you call that when you stay always at the same place? I forgot the name, but
Stagnant, when we're stagnant.
it's not stagnant. It's more like a permanent place where you live. Stagnation is when you're doing nothing. Uh, I mean, it's somewhere where you rot. But I wouldn't consider that. I'm still very active with the family and everything. So I mean, there's things that most people who won't be able to do it. Fasting is not for everyone. The people working hard, every day. I think they need to eat much more. It depends on everybody's case. I mean, some people will eat more, some people will eat less. I can like do it 3 days, then I'm not eating 3 days in a row in 15 hours a day, and then at the fourth day I need to eat. It's like it's resetting, and the way that my body is, we're becoming very conscious about the reaction that our body have when you're doing that. You're gonna have signs, and when you have these signs, you have to act. Or you're gonna pay. And I'm very much like that. When I'm not nourishing my body enough, I know it. It's very. I don't eat much. But I still need to eat a little bit. And so I'm more active in the evenings too. So there's a lot of factors like that. That we need to take in consideration, and it's case by case. Not everybody who's listening tonight is going to be able to do it, but fasting is very good. I suggesting to everyone.
Yeah, it's amazing. And when I went into the and one thing you just said there, Fred, I want to echo back what you said in a different way, is learn to listen to your own body.
Yep.
Learn to listen to your own body. And this is part of know thyself, which is, one of the main tenets of becoming an initiate. Know thyself, go within know your body, know what your body needs. It's not necessarily going to be one size fits all. You're absolutely right on that, Fred. I think I'm really glad that you made that point. And that's why it's important to use discernment. I'm sharing this fairly enthusiastically because of the results I've gotten. But you who's watching this, you may take a different path. You may embrace it. You may go further than I have. You may not go there at all. What I can say though is that it's when you decide to embrace it, if and when you decide to embrace it, it's a real deepening. You're going to meet yourself. You're going to meet a truer, deeper version of yourself. Because what I started to say a minute ago is when I started, my motivation was principally to end the suffering and physical suffering principally. But what I discovered along the way, which I was not necessarily fully cognizant of in the beginning, was the spiritual, psycho-spiritual aspect of leveling up and the complement to shadow work, the complement to going deep within my own psyche, becoming aware of what I was still struggling with. Because dry fasting, in addition to the specific health benefits that we can talk about, things like autophagy, stem cell generation, these are amazing physiological benefits that we should talk about, because physiologically we can regenerate our bodies. It takes a certain amount of time and discipline to get into that. But even from the first minute that you say, I'm going to dry fast, and then even the first hours of consciously doing it, you're gaining a benefit physically, yes, and mentally, psychologically, in terms of, building up your willpower, in terms of, activating a level of consciousness that you may or may not have activated. And the only thing I could say is if people, again, we all dry fast 6 to 8 hours a night, assuming people don't eat or drink during the night. So you can start by saying, I'm already dry fasting. Now, what can I do to, for example, double that and do 16 hours? So in other words, 8 hours, and then maybe instead of immediately eating, or, maybe instead of eating at the end of the day, we carve out an additional 8 hours of dry fasting. It's not the entire day. You still have an 8-hour window to eat and drink and be merry. But, you're basically pushing yourself a little bit so that you can experience for yourself the benefits, and you can come to discover them for yourself, which is really what it's all about. And that's what I want to encourage the people. And I just found this by accident, because I'll just tell a real quick anecdote. So as I mentioned, I've already done 3-day fasts a couple of times, but they were typically, where I was still drinking water, sometimes coffee, but I would try to just stick to a little bit of water. And just by coincidence, or maybe not, synchronicity, I was actually almost over the 3-day limit. 24. Yeah, I was almost over to the 3-day limit. And I was actually happy to continue, but I was invited to go. I had already been invited to go out to dinner previously with some hosts, and I wasn't going to decline the invitation. So basically, while we were going to have something to eat, I happened to fall into dry fasting. And the reason was I just forgot to drink something like up from a few hours before that. So I was basically six hours into like literally not eating and drinking anything. And I started to feel really good. And I started to feel this tingling going on in my whole body, like this healing energy coming through. Because I was expecting, I was having a bit of an aha moment, because I was expecting to feel, dehydrated. I was expecting to feel crappy, like worse, because I hadn't even drunk. And I felt better. I was like, this is really strange. I actually feel better by not drinking. So that was and then a few months after that, Logan Hart, actually fairly recently from the Wizard Factory, he had a fellow named Theo Lucier on his show, and they talked about biohacking. And one of the things they talked about was dry fasting. And he went really deep into it, deeper than I had ever heard someone. And that led me to explore the work of August Dunning, whom he recommended, who's a multi-year practitioner of dry fasting. And he actually has a protocol called the Phoenix Protocol, which I recommend people either read the book or watch his videos on YouTube, August Dunning. And I was like, wow, like it just, my eyes opened up wide. My mind was I was captivated, Fred. I was like, I had to embrace it. I had to at least give it a try.
I mean, the I we and as I said before, I mean, there's habits that we inherit from this culture, from our family. And I remember when I was young, there was no fasting at all, and I didn't know anybody who was doing it. We usually had big plates, desserts and soup, and there was these generous plates, filled with food. And I since I started to do that, I may be at, I mean, the third of what I was eating before. I eat significantly less, and from time to time, your body is talking to you. You take in some food, some kind of food, and your body said no. And I think it's a very introspective exercise, fasting. And I'm yet to try this. I'm very curious about what you just told to us about your story about your dry fasting. And yeah, I understand perfectly this well-being. You know, I- at one time you start really having, you're very hungry, but when you go through that, afterward it's very good. I like it very much. It's a good feeling, and it gives you an idea of your boundaries, and how far you can go, you know with your own body, and make it, and working, it's a work for being better. And I don't know anyone who had bad experiences from that. I mean, people can starve themselves for sure, but I mean, you have to take in consideration and do it with care. I think this is where it starts. It's care.
Exactly. And I want to, I am part of my desire here is to basically implant on people a motive to at least check this out for themselves and explore it a little further. And that's why I recommend the same author that Logan and his guest recommended on their podcast, which is Dr. August Dunning. He's not an MD, but he's 100% dedicated. He's still making YouTube videos today about the topic. He's written a book called The Phoenix Protocol. So you can think of rebirth. And he continues to create content. So whether you like to read a book, which I recommend, I've read his book twice already. So it's important to understand that there are physiological benefits to this. So for people who are looking for healing, I'll just briefly mention the highlights and then leave it for people to go do this research. But these are amazing benefits, so they're worth mentioning. The first is when you stop all digestion, including food and water, after a short period of time, your body starts to immediately go into healing mode. Again, this happens every night when we sleep. One of the first things that happens are processes called autophagy, AUTOPHAGY, which literally means self-eating or eating the self. Basically, what happens is your immune system, vis-a-vis certain types of cells, goes and starts to clean up the dead and damaged cells and cell parts in your body pretty much almost immediately. So for people who are not ready to go into an extended dry fast, but just want to try it for even 24 hours or 16 hours, you're going to get this benefit, autophagy, right? And this is part of the thinking behind intermittent fasting. People are familiar with intermittent fasting. Part of it is, autophagy. So this is an amazing benefit that you can get from day one, almost immediately. And you're going to feel better. Just, I do, just knowing that this is happening in my body. Like I can feel it. It's hard to explain that until you've actually experienced it. But there are things that will happen that you have to pay the price. We talk about paying the price, right? The price for the longer benefits of dry fasting, or the price you have to pay is you have to do it for at least 48 hours. And that can seem pretty daunting. And the reason is because there's a cascade of hormonal changes that occur in the body, but they do not happen immediately. They take 24 to 48 hours, depending on the person, to occur. And these hormonal changes, which are happening in the hypothalamus, in the pituitary gland, in the adrenal glands, and other parts of the body, what they are doing is several things. They are switching the body over to ketosis. Again, something I think people will be familiar with, where instead of your body seeking out glycogen, which is the precursor to generating glucose, which is one of the ways that our body generates fuel, is we're switching over to fat burning, strictly fat burning. And that's why we feel tired and irritable even in the beginning of a fast, because that process it's not like an on-off switch. It's like a dial, because the hormonal changes are occurring, and then over time, 24 to 48 hours, that's switched on until you reach a maximum point where you're pretty much 100% fat fueled, and your body is generating fat and glucose for the brain, but it's all happening inside of your body, right? And then another thing that happens, and this is why you won't dehydrate to death even if you dry fast for 7 days, is through the process of burning fat, you're generating endogenous water. So you're not going to dehydrate. It's in balance as long as you follow the protocol, but you have enough water to survive. You're not going to die because you're not taking in exogenous water. And that's, I think, something that a lot of people struggle with. And this is why so many people, if you go, Google this, have survived and thrived on a 7-day to 11-day dry fast, because there is water in their body, and they're not completely dehydrating. They're using endogenous water, right? And then the last benefit, which is especially beneficial for healing, is endogenous stem cells, which are those undifferentiated cells in your body, and there are different types that can help you regrow almost any structure your body needs. I mean, these are basically the undifferentiated cells that can go in and repair your body physiologically, right? Even to bone, cartilage, ligament. I've literally feel, again, there is no arrival point, but have felt the healing benefits of this, even though I haven't gone, strictly into more than just, starting on 3 days, because there is a healing. So imagine what happens if you go through 7 days of this protocol in terms of your stem cell. August Dunning talks about it more deeply. You'll see the science. Incredible. But I mean, you don't have to go fly to Mexico to get stem cell infusions. You can generate it in your own body.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's very fascinating. I like it very much. I'm going to look into it for sure. I'm very curious about it. Like I mentioned, I already do that a little bit, not 24 hours, but just this time, just this 10 to 15 hour, it feels good, and I can see why these people keep doing it, in 7 days. God damn, 7 days. And it's impressive. It's impressive, the power of the body, all these powers that we have inside of us, they are dormant because people don't know it, and it's very interesting.
And you make a practice out of it. I was on my way to doing 3, day 4, and I made some mistakes, and I had to back out of the fast because of that. And it's okay. I mean, we shouldn't beat ourselves up. I made a few mistakes. I'm in a very hot tropical area, and I overexerted myself while I was on the fast. I had a false sense of, it's not a false sense of well-being, but I overstated my ability, because on day 3, when the ketosis kicks in, you get your energy back. Your hunger goes away, and you start to feel energy because your body is now fully fueled. So I had a false sense that, I can just walk around and do my shit. No. Your body you still need that rest. Yes, you will have more energy, and you won't be as cranky and as irritable as on day 1 and 2, but you still need to stay out of too much direct sunlight so you don't dehydrate. So I made that mistake, and I wasn't able to continue, but that's part of the learning process. I listened to my body, and I knew that I had to end the fast because of that mistake I made, but that's fine. Now I know the next time not to do that. So think of it like a practice, something that you like sharpening the sword. The first time, like I said, 16 hours, then 24, then 48. See what you can accomplish, see what you can create for yourself from any length of fasting.
Yeah, absolutely. And so encourage people to go there, and if you're interested in that, don't believe us, go see for yourself, go get the information. And David suggested us the Phoenix,
The Phoenix
what's the name
Protocol.
again? The Phoenix Protocol. Absolutely, and I'm gonna look into that for sure. What was the second subject that you wanted to bring in?
Yes,
can
I want
remember.
to. I want to share like some of the nutritional and eating habit
Yes.
changes that I made, because this kind of goes together with the fasting. And I actually started working on this earlier, like even way earlier, even before I became aware of natural law, we'll say, because I was able to figure out a few things. And let me just preface this by saying, so again, really quick anecdote. When I was a kid, I was so addicted to sugar that I would go to the candy shop, and this is in the late 1970s, early 1980s, just to put this in context. I would go by myself as a pre-teenager to the candy shop, and I would gorge my face. I would pour sugar down my neck like there was no tomorrow. I mean, can you imagine the level of consciousness that one has to have? My baby teeth didn't fall out, they rotted out. And that is not an exaggeration. I am not exaggerating. My baby teeth rotted out. And I still didn't fully get the message, right? And this ties into parenting, because my parents, and I'm just going to say this, did not care enough to, guide me in that regard and pay attention to what was going on with me, to not to rule over me and say, no, you can't do that, but to say, look, son, you can keep pouring sugar down your neck, and this is what's going to happen to you now, and this is what's going to happen to you later in your life. I mean, that would be, I think, the appropriate level of parenting, is to explain very clearly in no uncertain terms, here are the consequences you're going to face if you keep this up. And you want to pay attention. And that was completely absent in my life, as was almost all raising of me, right? And I'm not saying that to hate on my parents. I'm just saying that because it's objectively true. And but long story short, my sugar addiction continued, and I struggled with this pretty much my whole life. And it's a wonder that I didn't develop diabetes, like insulin dependence, but I had a lot of fluctuations in my mood and my mindset and my blood sugar because of that. I mean, there definitely were consequences. And just shut the window here. Hopefully you guys can't hear that background noise. It's pretty loud here in El Salvador. We'll do the best we can. So just bear with, if you hear background shouting or whatever, just roll with it. There's nothing I can do. But it may surprise people, but I struggled with this addiction even up until a few years ago. And then I finally started to connect the dots. And I realized that I needed to change something about my eating habits. And I started to study to the degree that I was able to. I started to explore nutrition, dieting, eating habits, what that entails. I've tried a number of different diets. What I finally came to, and this is basically how I eat today, I eat a high fat, high saturated fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate diet. That is my diet. High saturated fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate. Not zero, but as close to zero. And I maybe eat something pure sugary once a month. Again, the middle path. I don't believe in extremes. I don't believe in extreme abstinence, because that's just polarizing yourself the other way. And unless you have the will of steel, an iron will, I think you're just going to bounce back. That's how I look at it. But that's how I eat today. It's mostly animal products. And I eat generally within a 4-hour window every day. So you talked about, maybe not eating constantly. So this complements the fasting, because essentially I'm not hungry, because I've conquered my addiction to sugar largely. I mean, I still have the temptation. I'll always, it's sugar, it tastes great. I mean, what can I tell you? It's always going to be there. It's not about, extreme abstinence, but because I have mastered my ability to control my my own will, and not just reach for something sweet all the time, make it more of an occasional indulgence. I do love the taste of fruit, for example. I almost hardly get hungry anymore. I generally eat within a 4-hour window. It could vary depending whether it's in the morning or the night. And then I'm fasting for 20 hours. And now, because I've learned about dry fasting, I'm actually dry fasting for 20 hours. So I'm eating and drinking in a 4-hour window. I do still enjoy my coffee. I still enjoy my coffee. But now, instead of drinking multiple cups of coffee a day, I'm having that usually 1 cup of coffee, and then, and sometimes not even. And then gaining all the benefits. And I'm not feeling hungry. It's more like, oh, I should probably eat something. I mean, that's literally the signal that I get from my body. It's probably going to be a good idea for you to eat something now. Why don't you go do that, David?
I mean, sometimes it hurts, you start to feel very bad, and this is where my limit is now, after a few hours, it feels good, but I mean, when you eat, it's like you're truly hungry, it's not like because I smoke cannabis that I'm hungry, it's because I'm really like empty. But this is very interesting in the sense that we are both having a very different diet, if I can use this word, and I think there's not a unique way of eating for everyone. And I think this is where we have to use discernment. Once again, where it's coming back to discernment. So where are you willing to go, to feel better, And what I want to bring up is this relationship that we have with food is very important. And the quality of what you're putting in your body, the water, the product that you put in your body, not necessarily homegrown. You have vegetables or meat that come from huge chains and corporations and things like that. So, I mean, we're doing the best. The goal is doing the best that you can with the accessibility you have for different ingredients. I wouldn't, if I was eating meat, I wouldn't get my meat from grocery store. I before I stopped eating meat, we were buying it from a local farmer. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to make it better for everyone. When you're buying local, for your vegetables, fruits, meat from the farmer, from the local farmer, then you're creating a network. We can go get your eggs there, or your vegetables there, or your meat there. So it depends on what meat you take. So yeah, it's a very general, approach to the individual.
Absolutely. And what you said right there about changing your relationship to food, Fred, I like that a lot. And I can tell you I have a whole different relationship with food. I eat much more consciously now. I think about everything that I'm eating. I have a relationship with it. I enjoy the taste more. I appreciate the experience more. I value the nutrition. I can literally feel myself, the nutrition going in my body. I think consciously about where that food came from. And I also agree with what you said. I think, regardless of what the constituents of our diet, of our nutrition are, if we can source them locally and not through production, not through factories, animal factories. I mean, there's a big difference, between that direct relationship where wherever you get your food, whether you're killing an animal to eat it or you're picking something off of a tree or a bush or out of the ground, when you have that direct relationship, or you're interacting directly with someone who has, so it's a direct secondary relationship. This is very different than going and buying packaged stuff in a grocery store that it's just like it's given to you like it might as well be manufactured, because there is a complete separation between you and that food source. So I think if we're talking about going back to nature, and I love many of the creators talk about this. Corey talks about this. Will Keller talks about it, like the return to nature. Food and nutrition is no exception. We are meant to have a more direct relationship with the sources of our food. So some of the benefits of this kind of fasting regimen, even if it's intermittent, is you're going to change. I think, based on my own experience, you can change your whole relationship with food. And that brings me to one point. I just want to throw this in here without belaboring it. Is, how we talk about no one can be told the truth, you have to discover it for yourself. Well, a corollary to that in relation to all these things that we're talking about is you need to be the one to experiment on yourself to figure out what works for you. That is the only way you're going to know whether any of these things that I'm talking about or that we're talking about make sense for you personally. I'm talking to you, the viewer here. So I encourage people to experiment on themselves. I mean, that may sound like a crazy thing to say, and if I were a doctor, I would be dragged to court under lawsuit, right? If we were in that realm, because you can't say that as a quote unquote healthcare professional. But I'm saying you need to be willing to experiment on yourself. That is the only way you can figure out what's actually going to work for you or not, with respect to these things, and that you can gain the benefits that those entail. So don't be afraid to do that. 99.999% of the time, you're not going to die by experimenting on yourself. 99.99999% of the time. And you're probably going to discover some amazing things that if you weren't willing to, see, there will never be a trial, a under natural law, there can never be a trial which will prove causality with respect to any of these claims that I'm making or that any of these people are making. It cannot happen. There is no moral, ethical way to prove any of these things that we're saying. The only way you can prove them is by looking at data, drawing correlations that make sense, using common sense, and then actually trying it on yourself. So I don't want to belabor that point, but I just want to encourage people, like, you're the laboratory. You get to be your own laboratory. You get to figure out what kind of diet you're going to eat that's going to make sense for you. You're going to be able to listen to your body. That's what I had to do in order to start to dig myself out of the hole of the pain that I essentially created for myself through my neglect of my own health and through my lack of caring enough about these things.
This is the mentalism and correspondence. Some people will say that food has its own vibrations. So the principle of vibration is still there. There's a lot of relationship we have with nature, this energetical connection we have with nature. And I mean, it's a perfect transition for ground and earthing. I didn't do it much. I was when I was living into the cities, you don't do it that much. But when I could get out of it and go more into the rural places, we have much more grass and trees and things like that everywhere, and just to be there now in nature, and you take out your shoes, take out your socks, and then you're maybe sleeping on the ground. Maybe you only put your feet. Some people will go in the water, and this is our connection. It's a direct connection with this important vibration of the earth.
Yeah, I mean, grounding and earthing, again, something I can't speak highly enough, something that I would encourage every single person, who's watching this to go give it a try. See what you can learn about yourself from it. It's a very powerful practice. If you think about it, like so many things in modern civilization, we're literally walking around separated by, an inch or a couple of centimeters from the earth. And it's amazing how separate we become from nature, again, talking about the same thing, through that process of having, and it's not an accident that the soles of shoes are not conductive of electricity. Because here's the thing, again, people will recognize the truth of this. Our bodies are bioelectric, they're biochemical, they're electrochemical. So electricity plays a big part in our bodies. We know this already. The electricity causes our heart to pump. But electricity is involved in every single aspect of our biochemistry. It's a fundamental part of who we are. Electrons are our friends. Our body is constantly humming. People know this when they go get acupuncture. They can feel the energy being activated in their body. What happens is those electrons may become depleted over time, and there may start to become an imbalance in the body. So physiologically, when we connect back to the earth, we get it's like getting a free source of electrons, like at a very basic level. And that's why I think if you even ground yourself for even 10-15 minutes, you're going to feel an amazing difference. For anyone, especially people who may be suffering or have been suffering either through temporary illness or some kind of injury or whatever, I think you will experience a benefit, and I encourage you to try that. The other benefit is everything is information, and my relationship with the planet is it's a living organism just like we are. It's just at a different order of magnitude. And when I connect with the earth, it's interfacing with that organism, and I'm receiving information which I can use spiritually. Like sometimes it will help me to gain an insight about even an unrelated topic, something just whatever in my life, like answering a question or coming back to a principle or understanding something more deeply. So even beyond the physiological benefits, I feel more connected just by spending time touching the earth. I met a guy once, he made a point to walk barefoot, even in the city, everywhere he went. And while he didn't necessarily tout it for this reason, I think that part of it was he was naturally drawn to say, fuck that 2 inches of rubber that I'm going to walk around all the time. That's ridiculous. I'm going to stay connected to the earth. So grounding or earthing, some people go so far as to connect their, put a sheet under their bed sheets so that while they're sleeping, they're literally grounded for 8 hours a night. And I think that's amazing. If you want to go through doing that, probably the benefits you'll get will be astounding compared to even just doing it a few, 10-15 minutes a day. But it requires no technology at all. It just requires you going out, just find a piece of, place in the earth, which is conductive. So it's not made entirely of material that doesn't conduct electricity, like glass or wood or something. And just stay connected and see what you can create. Stand or sit, just keep your feet connected. I think you'll achieve an amazing benefit, and it's so easy to do.
What we feel is radiations from the earth, and radiations are vibrations. So I mean it's incredible connection. It's all these things are intertwined in one another. And you were talking about this nature of our body. We are minerals, we are water, we are electricity, we are a chemical being too. We have different products that are self-made, in our bodies. And this balance, there's one thing that I suggest to everyone is to go take a walk in the woods. The smell, the way you're feeling when you're walking into forest or a group of trees or a path that you have in the forest, it smells so good. And it's really balancing. On my case, I talk by my experience. When I'm walking in the wood, when I'm going there, it's like it's balanced. You feel so great. All the smells, all the wind. It's so great. It feels so good to be in nature.
It's amazing, Fred. And I'm actually about to move locations here in El Salvador to a smaller town than where I am now, in the mountains. So it's going to be a cooler climate, which I'm really looking forward to because I've been suffering, admittedly, from the heat. And this town, one of the things that it's prized for is it has incredible amounts of nature all around the town. It's very accessible, like minutes walking in almost every direction. There's forest and nature. And I'm so looking forward to that. And I'm going to take to heart what you just said. I'm going to go walk in nature. I'm going to see if I can walk even barefoot for part of the time to start building up. Because obviously, if the bottom of your feet are not used to, which most of us aren't, walking barefoot, it is going to be uncomfortable in the beginning because we haven't built up necessarily the calluses or even just the sensation. So, but yeah, I'm so looking forward to being in nature, and anything we can do to spend more time in nature in a natural setting is
just
a
open
benefit.
your windows when it's raining outside.
Yeah.
All this good stuff, it's air purifying stuff. If you want more, you go when it's raining. It's even better, because you have this, the smell when it's raining. It's all good stuff. It's all good stuff for us, and this relationship we have with water, and I suggest everyone to go explore this. Nature as itself is a lifetime of studies, and it's no coincidence that we can influence by our vibrations, by our emotions, by the way we behave, and it has been tested on plants, that's been tested on food, onto water, so we're very, very, and we are living into an osmosis of energy, and what we want as humans and what we're pretending to do, me and David, is to bring people back to common sense. It's simple as that. It's like, with the people who are living into big cities are very different from people living into the rural place, and it's no coincidence. This detachment from nature is very it changed us, and it's no coincidence, and I'm having the chance to have access to forest and things like that near home. Beautiful places, mountains, beautiful place, and it's filled with nature, animals. I take care of my little birds, outside. I like them very much. They're helping me when I'm waking up in the morning and I'm going outside, and I see them, and they're coming very close, and just that it feel like weird, but nature is very powerful when you understand the depth of this connection with it and our own nature at the same time. And this is an all other subject that we could talk about, the nature of human, and why is it so beneficial,
as within, as without, the principle
Yeah.
of correspondence, right? That's what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
getting back to our nature and nature itself. Nature is truth, and it's very simple, just said like that, It's almost incredible how simple it is, but people don't understand it. And we are them. We are this. We are nature. So
Yep.
it's always something to think about. I get lost in my thoughts, when I think about this, and how beautiful nature is, and how beautiful humans are when they're not killing each other, when they're not treating each other badly or doing harm, and this is where we have to go, this nature. And for the people listen to that, it's not about nature of, it's your own nature that is important. Because if you don't know that, if you don't have access to this knowledge that is pretty simple, actually, it's pretty simple to understand. If you don't know that, it's like you didn't even started the work. If you don't understand your own nature. And if people have the tendency to overcomplicate it, and obfuscate it, but it's pretty simple. So, is it me? Or there's sound?
It started raining here, so talk about synchronicity. What you're hearing is the sound of the rain. Yeah, it's literally when we start. Oh, okay, it's raining there as well. But I think here you can hear it more because maybe just it's a torrential rain. I'm in the tropics, so the rain comes down very hard. And I think that's synchronistic, but it just started raining really hard as we were talking about rain. I also love the smell of the rain, especially when it just starts, like you were saying, Fred. I mean, it brings back so many memories. And let's talk briefly about the principle of correspondence. I mean, I think what you were just sharing is a great illustration of the nature within us. And this is really all we're talking about today on this podcast. If we want to kind of put it encapsulate it in a way of looking at it, is if you want to better understand what's going on around you and also improve the world, which I think we all want to do, look within first, because the reflection of what's going on in your own nature is the reflection of what's going on in the world around you. And this is why in my own work, and I think you're the same way, in fact I know you're the same way, Fred, this is why we don't talk a lot about the geopolitical, even from a natural law perspective. We don't get too much into the yes, we will mention it, we will talk occasionally about what's actually going on in the world, but the body of what I focus on is all about the self and how we can regenerate ourselves and the world through the changes that we can make, through an improved relationship with ourselves, through better understanding our nature, and then acting accordingly within ourselves, towards ourselves. And then, wow, that rain really got loud now. It's like a crescendo, it's like an emphasis. I'm sure you guys can hear it. I don't know what it sounds like, but on your end, but
it sounds like a wave that is crashing on the beach.
Yeah, it's like it's like emphasizing what I'm saying is like, this is the main point. Go deeper within your own nature to explore these areas, and you'll find all the answers. I mean, you literally will find all the answers that way.
So, we're an hour and 10 minutes, so I think it's perfect. But I would like to have you another time, if you wish. And we can maybe dig deeper into that. I think it would be a good thing. And I want to thank everyone. David, thank you very much for sharing your time and your wisdom with us. I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fred. It's my absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation. And of course, just like you and everyone, I learned as much as I was able to share. So, anytime you want, my friend, you can count me in.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for being patient. For the people who like the sound of the beach, then you... I like it has got very, very... because you close your sound. Okay. So thank you everyone for watching, and for the people who will listen into afterward. Thank you very much for being there, and we're gonna see ourselves soon enough. Maybe in French, probably the next one. And take care of you people, and see you in the next one. Bye.